Welcome back to another episode of Rapid Fire brought to you by SimpliFaster. I'm your host, Justin Ochoa, and today I'm joined by my guy, Cody Hughes. Cody, how's it going, man? Good to see you.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me, Justin. I really appreciate it.
For sure, man. So I gotta, give you your props. You were showing the Pacers love all throughout the playoffs. Ultimately didn't go exactly how we wanted it to, but I remember seeing you at the conference down in Indy, and you got to see one of Halliburton's game winners, and you're like, "Hey, I'm riding with the Pacers from here on out. So let's
Yeah,
go."
I'm
You,
locked. Yeah, but we watched it
yeah,
at the watch party at one of those restaurants downtown, and honestly, we just
yeah,
happened to come upon that. Didn't even I wasn't even aware that the game was on, and we sat and watched that whole game, and we were like, they were getting crushed. They were down like 30. And we just
yeah.
kept watching, like, bro, they got a chance to make this comeback, and then it was insane. So I was like, you know what, Pacers all the way. Hopefully, they can make it happen. So it's fun.
Man, we're so close. Maybe in a couple of years we can make another run. But I appreciate you joining me, man. This is gonna be great to catch up with you on some of these topics that we have planned. But I know you personally, you made a big major career leap here in the last few months. So I just want to give you an opportunity to kind of update, the Simply Faster listeners and audience on, where's Cody Hughes now and what's he got going on.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, so I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. I've been privileged to join Brian Kula and us to basically co-direct the sports performance initiative for this larger company that's being created here in Nashville called the Farm and Forge Club, where essentially it's going to be this massive campus where it's going to drive both elite level athletes, sports performance, and also community at the same time. So a lot of different things involved. Our highest, most important clientele right now is the tennis academy, where we'll have athletes that can come on with us full time, have online school, and pursue professional tennis, college tennis, so on and so forth, but also operate as a sports performance business. So we're still training anywhere from 10 to 12-year-olds, youth athletes, high school, middle school athletes, and also training, all the way up to pros, pro tennis players, NFL athletes, things of that nature, and having a wide variety of clientele. And we're in the middle of facility development. We've broken ground. We're designing our facility and working out of some local high schools and performance centers here in the Nashville area right now. So we're building this thing, man, getting to build it from dust. And it was just an unbelievable opportunity I couldn't say no to.
Yeah, man. So I want to get into that because I know you spent a lot of your career in the high school level, working with high school athletes and even some middle school athletes. And you mentioned here at the Farm and Forge, there's going to be a wide range. And I just wanted to kind of see, from the youth training perspective, what are those principles that you're going to bring over from your time in high school and younger, and how you're going to implement those? Like, if you have any kind of non-negotiable, like core principles for youth development that you really believe in, what are some of those things that you're going to bring over?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our number one thing is coordination. I mean, that's our first and foremost primary training stimulus for young kids is to just move and challenge their brain in every plane and every speed possible. Now, we've got systems and stuff, and it's in the way that we kind of orient ourselves is based out of speed development. So it looks like speed, but with young kids, it's not always going to be extremely structured because their brains don't really work that way. So we want them to be able to constantly challenge themselves to build coordination while their brain is just so fresh and can be developed. People think it's silly, but like little things just like mock drills, learning how to skip, learning how to do, skipping on one side, add, lateral plane movement, shuffling plus skipping, you know, small sided games that make them try to solve movement problems, things of that nature. And then also just learning positions and body awareness, right? From an isometrics perspective, I think a hinge is a foundational movement for every athlete. So we're going to try to teach pelvic control, but you only have so much time frame with some of these youth athletes because their attention span, you got to keep them locked in. So you got to give them a little bit of, structure and a little bit of unstructure that's actually planned for trying to accomplish something that you want. So, and then just being patient. That's the biggest key is like not trying to rush that process because you're just trying to build those pathways neurologically that are going to be built without output until that machine starts to turn on developmentally. Then you start pouring gas on the fire, and then those pathways are already pre-built. So now they're going to be a lot more efficient. You're going to see results a lot faster. I think it's not real smart to feel like you need to make a prepubescent athlete strong necessarily, from an output or performance standpoint. Now, do you want to build strength from a relative strength standpoint, because most of their strength is going to come from coordination. So coordinative control, inter and intramuscular coordination, coordination across the board. So that's where we really hone in on with that young group.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So, in terms of like youth training right now, I know there's some good and some bad. What are maybe some of the major mistakes that you're seeing with this athletic development age group? And then what are some of the things that, we can do as a collective industry to maybe help mitigate some of those mistakes and avoid them and really get these kids what they need?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, if you go a little crazy and try to strength train at a high output level with these young kids, like there's just no need to try to see if you can really load up anything
Hmm.
extremely heavy, just because their system is just not really there to accept that. And also just from way too much sports practice, man, just too much sports
Yeah.
training. Like volume has got to be considered here because their little bodies are just not prepared for those type of things. And the thing is that it's really difficult because they don't have a ton of output, so they don't have injury rates in the beginning that are going to really show. But that's like just constant hours and bullets being spent on these kids where that accumulation eventually is going to catch up with them at some point a lot earlier than normal. But it's so insidious because you can't see it. Because a lot of
Mhm.
kids that don't create any output don't get hurt because they're not near strong enough to try to make
Right.
something strong enough to get them hurt. So a lot of times parents are super naive, right? So it's our job too to educate, parents on as far as what they're doing outside of training, rather than just having bad training. And try to keep the kid engaged in training. Make them enjoy training on a lifelong pace and not try to think it's all about being tough. I mean, think about bringing in a 10 or 11-year-old and just like trying to just absolutely dust them on the
Right.
floor and have them tired and, oh, you're getting that work type of mentality, because eventually they're going to hate it. You're not really going to see anything from it. And you're probably not going to see any consistent progress. You got to make them fall in love with training. And that doesn't mean you don't work hard. That's not the case. But I see a lot of that too. So just trying to rush that process, thinking it's all work and no play, and just playing way too much competitive sports instead of trying to train the body enough.
For sure. No, the parent thing is a big thing. Even as a parent of young athletes myself, with a good background in training, I'm always trying to toggle that line of like, what is too much and what is too playful and what is, maybe not structured enough to actually keep their attention span. Like, are you constantly having to educate parents? Because essentially parents are going to be, I'm 35, right? So it's going to be people my age or older. And our generation didn't train properly. Like we were like, you got to be tough. You got to just grind through it, blah, blah, blah. So a lot of the parents, especially parents that didn't make it to any like really respectable level in a sport, that's all they know. And so they might just try to instill that in their kid. And it's like, as a professional, like, what are some of the tough conversations that you might have tried to have, or some of the strategies that you use to educate these parents on what actual proper development is?
Well, I mean, it's tough because it's going to be really difficult to try to have a voice that's louder than what their personal experience was. So first and foremost, you try to build a working relationship with one, like, are you treating their kid really well? So they trust you, right, around that. And then constantly just trying to message, from almost like an indirect way, trying to message like, hey, training effect, stimulus, but you don't see results till you recover. Like if we don't recover, we don't see
Hmm.
results, and you're telling their kids that, and they're kind of hearing it from afar, and they invite them, kind of leaves an open invitation to ask good questions. And once somebody asks a smart question about, hey, how do you think I should go about this, and then that opens up the invitation to go a little deeper. It's probably not going to go well if you just try to demand it on top of somebody, and tell them, no, this is, you're wrong, this is what you should be doing. It never goes well. But constantly trying to just talk about what training process and adaptation looks like. General
Hmm.
adaptation syndrome. What is it? How does it happen? What's the physiology behind it? What does recovery look like? What does nutrition, sleep, and hydration look like? Just constant little conversations over time typically piques interest and digs for more
Hmm.
questions. Then when you have a chance to go a little bit deeper with them, you take it.
Yeah. In today's youth, something that I've kind of noticed over the years is like parents want that advanced air quotes advanced training earlier, and not necessarily knowing like that, some of the highest profile athletes are still doing goblet squats, are still doing split squats, RDLs, like very basic stuff that's not quote unquote advanced. So are you seeing like more parents kind of wanting stuff that looks cool or looks different, or are parents kind of not really in tune with that stuff?
Well, I mean, from our current standpoint and how like, I'm lucky enough to work with Brian Kula, who has a pretty established name with working with
Yeah.
Christian McCaffrey and Saquon and a lot of other guys that it kind of is like, hey, trust that guy. Like they know what he's
Yeah.
doing. But
Yeah.
at the same time, like especially in the tennis community, they're looking for some specificity. Like it's not necessarily advanced, but they want specificity. And a lot of times it's like, yeah, great. And then I go back to doing what I was doing anyway. Like
Right.
it's kind of a like, yeah, for sure, we definitely handle that. Or do what you were doing anyway and try to spend terminology on it. I literally did it the other day. We were doing a med ball toss, and there's terminology in tennis on how you hit a forehand with an open stance or with a closed stance. All that is basically a different foot in front of the other, right? On how you basically makes it contralateral or ipsilateral. Pretty simple.
Okay.
And if you're going to make a med ball throw and you're going to do both instead of saying contralateral or ipsilateral, which what the hell does that mean? Right?
Right.
You say open stance, closed stance to a tennis player, and they go, oh, and then they go, well, that's a tennis term. I'm training. This is tennis specific
Yeah.
training. I hate that it's such a psychology game because specificity doesn't really exist in our world, as far as stimulus goes. To me, specificity is more about training calendar and knowing when to apply stimulus. That's the specificity. So we do a lot more in that realm rather than just advanced. You know what I mean? Advanced training. And to be honest, some kids they don't really know training at all. They think we're just so organized it looks advanced anyway, you know?
Yeah.
And if somebody's asking for more advanced work, it's just another opportunity to educate, on the training process, and that it doesn't really matter what your skill level is if your training age is low, because you don't want to skip steps and miss out on the gains you're going to get from this portion of development, rather than trying to skip ahead and the stimulus is not going to be near as good once, if you just try to skip all these steps. So and to be completely honest with you, I don't even really care. Like you can tell me you want this advanced training. I go, great. Sounds good. Let's go do what we were going to do anyway, because this is what
Yeah.
you hired me to do, so.
Exactly. No, for sure. Speaking of advanced, like I know you're really tuned in velocity based training. And I think people may look at that sometimes as like an advanced tool. And I think you and I have talked numerous times in the past on like some of the misconceptions about VBT. We were talking before the show, and I'm not going to say the number, but you told me the budget for for some of the equipment that you guys got at the facility. Just want to see kind of what technology you guys are investing in, and then maybe dive in on some of the usages that you plan to go with some of that tech.
Sure thing. Yeah. And then I'll also hit on like every single one of our athletes are going to use these things from a 10-year-old all the way up to a pro. And to me, like advanced training, it's so funny, Justin, because like the way we train some of our 12-year-olds and the way I train a 10-year NFL vet that I had this morning looks very similar. I mean, it really does. Like there's so many things that are very parallel. There's reasons behind it. But as far as like our facility goes, we're going to be really high on technology. Like we're going to use Vitruve as our VBT provider. It's the number one company I believe in, the highest. We're going to use them. I really prefer the tether over everything, just from an
Yep.
accuracy and a precision standpoint. So we're going to use that as our primary VBT, and we use that anywhere from young kids all the way through. Just from I could talk for hours on this, as you know, but
Oh yeah.
how it's just a measurement tool, right? And it's a feedback tool to help increase something, right? It's not, as long as it's all in the coach and how the practitioner sets it up, because you can absolutely set it up to make it be completely inappropriate. Like,
Hmm.
but that's not on the tech, that's on the coach. So keep that
For
in mind.
sure.
All right, so we got that. We're gonna go, full 6 Sorinex racks in our performance center. Right, we'll have an entire Kaiser A400 suite, so we'll have like a Kaiser functional trainer behind every other rack, where we can get a lot of power readings, rotational movements, all pneumatic, Kaiser equipment. So everything from their leg extension, leg curl, belt squat, jump squat, runner, their whole series, their deadlift machine, and all of it be compression resistance rather than plate resistance. And plus, every single machine will have VBT built in and power wattage built in, which is pretty sick.
Hmm. That's dope.
We'll have Hawken Dynamics force plates, We've got 4 1080 sprints that we'll have inside the building that we already have those that we're using. One of the most primary training tools that we use every single day with kids all the way up to pros. We'll have Z Tread. Okay, so that's like if you've ever heard of Uber Zadi, right? They're high speed Z Tread treadmill that does a lot of different things, and you can actually train multi directions on that thing. You can do change of direction on it. It's a big long treadmill that teaches sprint mechanics and things really well based off the positions and the protocols built in. We'll have Vertimax inside of our building as well to use for some specific situations. We'll also have some 1080 quantum synchro for our high level testing data
That's
to be
dope.
able to truly assess our athletes. I mean, from our tennis academy perspective, I hope that I can get to the point where I can find a correlation of serve speed, and forehand speed to be able to start predicting performance and how to create a pathway in order to be able more, perform at a high level as a tennis player and be able to assess an athlete both from a force plate, from a vertical power standpoint and a rotational power standpoint, match it with their anthropometrics on their size and the limb length and all that, and go, hey, you've got a chance to hit a ball X miles an hour if we train right. That's the end goal, right?
Mhm.
We're trying to work backwards from there and we've got all the capabilities inside. Also, Dasher timing gates. We'll go with the Dasher Silvers, which is sold by SimpliFaster. And then our GPS provider is going to be FirePod, which we're really pretty excited about, and some things that they're bringing to the forefront. So pretty big facility. And that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
With
man.
everything you can think of. We'll also have high level recovery and physical therapy included in house. So hyperbaric chamber, cryotherapy, red light bed, IV, hot tub, cold tub, sauna, PEMF, like everything you can think of from a modality standpoint to help anybody that wants to come in to recover better. Even weekend warriors, to come in and get that recovery modality that can be effective for them. So, and keep in mind, like, I still don't think a lot of this technology makes things advanced. Sure, do you need to have systems and have abilities to execute these things? Sure, there's a learning curve. Can you get
Mhm.
results without them? Yes, you absolutely can. If that's your
For sure.
definition of advanced, of being like have a systematic learning curve, then okay, that's fine, but it's on the practitioner. The training principles never change. We're still using progressive overload. We're still manipulating the same variables anybody else does. We're manipulating volume, intensity, duration, density, vector, plane, stability, everything you can think of as far as how you change variables for loading stimulus. That's all we're doing, right? We're just doing it with other means.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's gonna have a lot of great data being collected in terms of, I don't know if you guys have your, assessment protocol already in the works or if, because it's kind of still being built, there's still some missing pieces. But from like an assessment standpoint, you dumping all that data into like an AMS and then creating like almost like a player profile for each athlete, or what does that look like?
Yeah, 100%. We'll go with Rock Daisy. Rock Daisy is going to be our custom AMS provider. They're going to be able to, white glove service us, which is great. That partnership that I've been involved with is going to help us a ton. I'm very familiar with the platform already, so being able to take in things, and we're building out our assessment process already. And like we'll be able to take any athlete that walks through our door, goes to any coach or our assessment coordinator, be able to go through our assessment process from all right, your size, height, weight, your force plate analysis, your speed, and any injury history and things like that. And we can explain why training is beneficial to you. The goal is to be able to get the right everything I want from a counter movement jump for the most part, from a force plate to be able to know just how powerful a kid is relatively, their
Hmm.
braking capabilities, their asymmetries, and use that over time as a testing battery. Because we're going to be a speed based performance program. Like we're not necessarily going to assess strength in our assessment, in my opinion, just because I think strength is something that a kid can jump in and just start training and it's naturally
Hmm.
going to happen. And a force plate jump will tell us, applied strength, in my opinion. So
Yep.
that's kind of where we're starting to build that out, right? It's coming. I think we've got a good skeleton that Brian's already done at his facility in Denver at Kula Sports Performance. We've got a good skeleton we're working off of to develop that, and then hopefully pop that into our AMS and to be able to identify strengths and weaknesses, hand it to a kid, hand it to a parent. And then also all of that data will start to tell a story of predictability at some point, I would hope.
Yep.
And that way we can start to sharpen up our protocols with that data.
Well, that's cool, man. I mean, being on the private side, it's always really cool. Like you were talking about the 1080. So I remember I had a kid probably like 7 6 7 years ago as like a seventh grader, came in for his assessment, got him on the 1080. We move. locations a couple times. He ended up finding me years later, like last year, and I went to put him in, and I'm like, "Oh, it says he already has an account." I'm like, "Oh, I did train you back in the day." I was like, "Oh, but you were 103 pounds. Like you're like a full grown teenager now." So it's cool to see that progression over time. And now, like you said, you might get a kid 10, 11 years old, get them in your developmental program, and then you may see them off to college or beyond, or and you'll have data, you'll have this story every step of the way. So I just think it's really cool, like on the private side. I mean, I know you've been on the high school side and you get 4 years of that, but what are some things that you're looking forward to for being on the private side, and some of those instances like that are really cool.
Well, I think I'll get a chance to experience a much wider base of people, from different sports, different demographics, train more pros, train college kids, but also train youth, because like in high school, I was primarily 9 through 12, anywhere from a 15-year-old to an 18-year-old. I didn't really get into
Hmm.
that youth population and really try to see the benefits of imagine if a youth kid went through like, an entire 3 years of a coordinative based program that had
Yeah.
them prepped for when they became a seventh or eighth grader. Maybe their training age is way ahead of things and you can move forward a little faster, right? Maybe we see something like that. And then also being able to see their path, and then also training these high level pros. It's just a completely different animal, man. Like
Yeah.
you got a guy that's been playing in the NFL for 10 years and you got all of your training is based around health and longevity, not necessarily performance output. Like you're not trying to
Right.
increase performance, you're trying to increase longevity. And what does that look like? Based every guy's different. We've got a training Kendall Fuller, who's a DB, Kyle Fuller's brother, came in, has some injury history on a knee, and we wanted to get it right and increase range of motion, stability, and mobility. And get him back to where he can get one more contract that basically sets his family up for life. I mean, that's pretty much what he came to us for. And his training looks a little different. Like we had, for example, this morning we're doing pin squats for our basic strength movement for our block right now that we do once a week. That's essentially the heaviest. But like I've got an undrafted free agent that's in year 2 with the Titans that can push a hell of a lot more weight and needs a little more stimulus than the 10-year vet that just needs just a
Yeah.
little bit of low volume to just kind of keep the system strong. Not gonna crazy go heavy, something that's good and then get off. And then he may have double the volume just because of where he needs to be from a developmental standpoint. So it's such a different it's so different from I'm training young kids and pros at the same time right now and seeing that in the new facility where we'll have that at scale. But also, it's funny to see the similarities in the two, because at the end of the
Yeah.
day, first principles still reign no matter if you're training an elementary kid or a 10-year vet. It really doesn't change principle wise. It's just a matter of where they're at on their pathway. And you got to be able to identify that and then give them a product that makes them happy. And then at the same time,
Yeah.
like, I'm not in a place where they're just gonna they have to show up every day anymore. Like you have
Right.
to deliver a good experience. You have to be a good person. You've got to make it full of energy and have a great experience. And then our facility will be so world class it'll probably attract people anyway. But the people are what going to keep them there. It doesn't matter if you ever like you ever heard somebody say you go to a 5-star restaurant that's so nice, but if you cut into the steak and it tastes terrible, it doesn't matter. You're not coming back. You're just not.
Right.
The
For
product
sure.
has to be good, no matter how shiny the toys are. So all of those things are on the horizon and I'm really fired up for it.
Yeah, man. It's funny, like you mentioned something I feel so strongly about working with primarily pros myself. It's like you just function, like getting them to function better and feel better. You'd be so surprised how much output that will give you. Just because, like, it's like you don't even need to train for output that much. If you can get them just feeling better, then their outputs are going to go up because they're not in pain all the time. And it's just
Right.
something that's really like stuck out to me over the years. Like, man, I feel like we're not doing anything. Like in the middle of a training cycle, I'm like, do I need to push them harder? Do I need to do more? And then they go hit a PR and like a something that we track, or like their counter movement jump looks better, or something positive happens. I'm like, I guess it's working. Like they're feeling
Yeah, no
better,
doubt.
so it's working. Last question I have for you. You did kind of touch on this earlier, and there's some differences between training pros and youth and everything in between, but you mentioned there are some similarities and some of those core principles still apply no matter what. Just wanted to kind of see, what are some of the maybe surprising things that people may not know about just how similar it can be to work with a 10-year-old and a 10-year NFL vet. Like, what do those look like?
100%. I mean, at the end of the day, we need to be able to move in three planes of motion. We need to be able to interact with the ground in movement-based sport. A young kid is trying to figure that out, right? They're trying to figure out what it means to have ankle stiffness. They're trying to figure out what it means to be able to control their limbs and move, whether it be sagittal plane, frontal plane, transverse plane, whatever. And all of those pathways are brand new, but they're trying to figure that out. And you're trying to give them a space to be able to do that. So many new pathways neurologically are being built during that time. And then on the pro side, sometimes you even come full circle because exactly how you said, you're trying to restore the ability for them to do that in the first place. So you
Mm,
almost go back to that foundational movement and ground interaction. And because there's some really great elite athletes that aren't necessarily great efficient movers. Like, that's one
yep.
thing I'm noticing really quick is like just because you were so powerful or so skillful that it's gotten you to this level, like your ankle stiffness and ground interaction is not very great. It's going to keep you from being able to change direction faster. It's going to keep you from being able to reach max velocity or keep some type of integrity with your hamstring when you sprint. From an injury risk mitigation standpoint, all of those types of things could look very similar to a 10-year-old and
Yeah.
somebody who's in year 4 of the NFL. When they strike the ground, does it feel like they're in concrete? They look like two totally different individuals, but the principles and concepts are almost similar. So the training looks almost similar. Now, the only thing you have to keep in mind is that the older pros outputs are 100 times higher than the 10-year-olds. So their volume just needs to be in check. The younger
Hmm.
kids need to be doing way more of that stuff, way more coordinative work. Like, how many times are you going to be able to learn how to skip laterally? Like, you need to keep doing it over and over and over and over again. With the NFL guys or whoever you train as a pro, you just have to be mindful because they're going to have to recover because their outputs are just so high. So that's really the only differences, and there's some common themes there that I really honestly never recognized just how foundational the training still needed to be for an NFL guy until I got my hands on a few starting to a couple years ago, and now training active NFL roster players where it's like, man, you're just trying to get them to the field. They've already done their output training, like they've already done it. Like, same thing with a young kid. Like, they're not ready for output yet, so they need to learn how to move. The older NFL guys have already developed their output. They don't necessarily need to get stronger. They need to move better with their strength. Maybe they
Yep.
lost mobility due to all the strength that they did in college or whatever. So it's almost like a bell curve. It's at least that's the way that I'm picturing it.
Yeah. No, I totally agree, man. I love that. Before I let you get out of here, man, I just want to say thank you again for jumping on here. This was great. Let the people know where they can find you, more information about yourself, and also the facility that's in the works.
Sure thing. Yeah. So, I mean, you guys can follow me on Twitter, X, and Instagram at CLH_strength. Got a website, CLHstrength.com. It's got some products and resources there. But also, I've written articles for SimpliFaster if you search my name on the website as well. And if you want to learn more about our upcoming facility, just go to Instagram and follow thefarmandforgeclub.com, the Farm and Forge Club. And then farmandforgeclub.com is the website. We're going to be updating and posting as much as possible, facility updates as we continue to build this thing out. If you're interested and want to follow along our journey and how we build this thing, go give us a follow.
Awesome, man. It's going to be great. I'm looking forward to seeing it all come together and appreciate you, bro.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.